So I have some questions for you. Do you want to take off like a rocket, but you just don't have the fuel? Do you feel like the dreams of your youth are now replaced with the frenzy of everyday living? Do you ever get the sense that you can't catch a break no matter what you try to do? What if you could actually have everything you wanted in life while still being you? What if you already had the resources you need to make it happen? It all starts with a question: what would you like? Hi, everybody. I'm Meredith Herrenbruck, author of Becoming Ridiculously Awesome. Who doesn't want that? I'm a transformational life coach, master NLP practitioner, family soul constellations facilitator, and Kahuna. I will share with you my tools to not only help you understand the underpinnings of what keeps your current experience in place, but also how to make your life better. You no longer have to grind through the day consciously forcing yourself to, quote, be different, be better, toughen up, get over it, get through it. You'll learn to release the long-standing behaviors and beliefs, and as a result, you'll naturally become more aligned to get what you want. My hope for your takeaways today are to finally understand about getting to the root cause of what stops you from having that success that you want. You will not need years of talking to a therapist. It only takes a few sessions. You'll gain access to resources to solve the problems that you're coming up against in your daily life. You'll also know that it's now possible to let go of those triggers and all that stops you from achieving your goals. You'll experience greater confidence in following your path with more ease and enthusiasm. Who doesn't want that? So is it possible to become ridiculously awesome? You might be thinking that I have tried absolutely everything. My answer to you is yes. First off, we have to understand and appreciate how the brain works, how it relays information to the body, and the results of such an operation. Then we'll get into other forces that influence our experiences, both physical and non-physical. So imagine that our brain is hardwired to find the best possible solution to any given circumstance. When it comes across a situation, it creates the best solution it knows how, given the existing resources it has. When we are 2 or 3, we have certain resources that we have access to versus the resources we have maybe when we're 45 or 50. They are very different. So by magical thinking and making it okay somehow, we have belief systems that are created here. So why am I sharing these specific tools with you as opposed to traditional talk therapy? Well, they crossed my path when I needed them for myself and found great healing very quickly. Change was noticed in moments, not weeks, not months, not years of talk therapy, which I had done for up to a year up to that point. So I think these are much more comprehensive to healing our experiences as a whole, more than traditional Western healing tools. They're fantastic and they have a wonderful amount of wisdom to them. What I find really difficult about that is they kind of get into the how do you feel about that? And we get into more of talking about our feelings and the results of the triggers and not really getting to the source of the triggers and really letting them go. So I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of doing what works and working at something from multiple angles for greater clarity and more complete healing. So right now, I want to set the intention first before we continue on what you'd like to get out of this time with me today. Take a moment and imagine what you'd like to gain for yourself, what you want to feel better about, what you want to experience maybe next week, maybe even tomorrow. Some small thing you feel you can manage or shift in your world. Maybe there's a long-standing question you have or a nagging issue that you want to understand better. If I haven't addressed some part of it for you, again, please wait and maybe ask those questions at the end. We can set up a one-on-one free 30-minute consultation at the end that I offer as well for further inquiry on how I can help you specifically. My intention for you right now is that you get greater clarity on how you can become more empowered in your life and more awesome. And for you to have greater access to resources that you didn't know you already had. With us envisioning and stepping into the image of or experiencing our future, the easier it will be for all those parts of you that can create the how for a more fruitful and focused path for ourselves. So let's get started. Have you ever seen a full image of an iceberg? There's one part at the top above the water, and a majority is actually below the water, supporting of what you see on top. Icebergs are formed when pressure causes ice chunks to break off from a glacier, which is comprised in compressed snow and ice with little or no melting. So the top 1/8 generally is above water. That's the part that you see in your life. What is stuck? What's not working for you? Those roadblocks that you keep getting, that's stopping you and frustrating you from moving on and reaching your goals. So this red flag you see in your experiences is kind of what we call the intended positive outcome, IPO. And the unintended positive outcome is what you're trying to get out of your experience. So for example, if you are wanting to, I don't have an example right now, let me think of one. If you are trying to get let's say a promotion, and part of you says, I really want that promotion. But then there are all these little no's in the back of your brain saying, oh, well, my dad says being too successful is not a good thing. You'll lose connection with your family, or there are judgments that you've learned about. All those little no's kind of creep up. And so then you end up sabotaging yourself from having that experience that you want. So you have these kind of intended outcomes and then these unintended positive outcomes. The unintended part is that you keep not getting that promotion that part of you really wants to have. So NLP is the main part that I work with, and it's what we do is we have what's called change work. And so this change work is really getting to those root sources, those root causes of what's keeping us stuck, keeping us triggered, keeping us in kind of this mode of not getting what we want. So that change work dives under the water to work with these hidden parts, the stuff that's buried, compressed, frozen, stuck, you name it. It's the stuff that makes up our total ecology, the entire experience that makes symptoms happen in the first place. So the tip of the iceberg, or the symptom you notice that's not working for you anymore, is in the top position of number 1. So what makes up the other 7/8? How do we get to them? This is where I come in. So first of all, in number 2 position, just underneath the water, is our critter brain. Okay, so this is the very old central part of our brain that takes care of the 5 F's. You have fight, flight, flee, or freeze, food, and fornicate, or have fun. So this is the ancient part of our brain. It's responsible for our survival. It's how we got to where we are today. Unfortunately, this is a big key here, whatever we survive, we later create in our lives. We have ill health, we have life-threatening events, we have abusive relationships, maybe there's chaos and stress in home. There are certain personality traits that keep coming up. So what we see in our current lives is really an echo of what we have survived long ago and far away. So our critter brain says, good job, we know that this chaos, perhaps as an example, is survivable. So keep doing it. So what fires together, wires together. Do you ever wonder why the law of attraction works for some and not others? It basically has to do with what we're surviving, among other things. So when we're sending out certain signals of, I don't want that, that's dangerous, and so forth, it's kind of tricky, because then on the flip side, what you are kind of sending out that you don't want, you're kind of creating that vibration of saying, well, I don't want it, but I'm going to still scan for it so I can keep surviving it. So all those things keep coming to you, and it's like this vibrational match. And when those vibrational layers match, then you keep getting all the stuff that you don't want. What we're going to start doing, and what I help teach my clients, is to get to those triggers so then you're not vibrating on that level anymore. You're not constantly saying, I need to survive that, I need to survive that. So you kind of let it all go with new resources and then are able to move forward. So what we're trying to do is when you're trying to solve the problem with the phrase, how do you feel about that, which is traditional in talk therapy, what happens is that we're getting stuck in the stories and we're reliving it over and over and over again. We're stuck in the feelings, the storyline, the results. We're hoping for a resolution, but it doesn't happen. So why does that happen? Because we are in the throes of a repeat, reliving the experience, but that's not where the healing happens. You're not getting to the root of the issue, and you have to go way back to the root. So the root, you've heard this a few times, of what is the root? It's the original imprint, okay? So when we're saying what we survive, we recreate, you are basically, your brain is wired to go back to that original imprint of when we survived, okay? And when we survive something, there's this magical thing that happens is we're creating beliefs. We're creating judgments about ourselves and the world, people around us. If you trip over a stick when you're 3 years old, you might believe that all sticks are bad, all sticks are horrible, and so you hate sticks for the rest of your life, or you fear sticks for the rest of your life. When you're older and you look back at that, you go, well, now that I'm looking at it, I don't necessarily need to have that experience anymore. But when you're having that original experience, you're creating these layers of beliefs, judgments about all these things, and they get all glommed in together. So when you have a similar experience, that old stuff is firing in your brain, and thus you have triggers and those natural second nature reactions. So in an effort to make our experience survivable, we keep experiencing all these things over and over and over again. So most often, all these beliefs and experiences and judgments occur before the age of 2, where 80% of the time, 80% of all the beliefs about ourselves and the world are experienced and really set in stone by the age of 2. And as a 2-year-old, they have only so many resources available. So sometimes this magical thinking is required. So we choose the best options of how to think and feel and what to do in order to stay safe and loved. It may work for a while because we survived that experience. But what about when we grow up and we're a teenager and adult? The brain uses that imprint, like I said before. It's kind of like a computer program with very excellent instructions, detailed to the nth degree. So it's that imprint gets repeated over and over and over again because it worked, and we haven't found a better offer. So we have to tease apart the original structure and make a better offer to our system. Otherwise, the change won't occur. So number 3 beneath the iceberg, underneath the water, is entities. I'm not going to go too deep into this, but there are energetic influences that attract us, or actually they attract to us and sustain and maintain an experience in our life. We gain psychic immunity around the age of 7, but weakened states such as depression, drinking, drugs, illness, fear, loneliness, whenever we feel small and maybe fragile, less awesome, if you will, and really vibrant and whole and dynamic, those entities can attach to us. And so the problem is that these entities are outside of space and time, and they don't seem to get a regular update that tells them, hey, this experience of being born with an umbilical cord wrapped around my neck was 43 years ago. So an entity that was seeking an experience of fear and terror might attach at birth. Kind of like that law of attraction thing I was talking about earlier, is you have kind of a vibrational match, and it just kind of syncs up. And often these entities will actually come because they're there to help or to hinder, or it's just, wow, I want to have that experience. And it just kind of syncs up. So every day after that is maintaining at a subconscious level an element of fear and terror in our lives. So over a lifetime, we stabilize that experience, but it affects everything we do. So entities can almost be like energetic dust bunnies, if you will. Once they attach, they can be anywhere, everywhere, on the subway, maybe kind of like a haunted house, or just whenever you're feeling kind of small, I don't know, it tends to happen. And so it's very quick and it's very subtle. You probably wouldn't even notice it, but it does happen. Those entities can also bring on kind of their own personality traits, their own fears, and their own baggage. So what happens is that their baggage kind of becomes your baggage. I have lots of interesting stories about that, probably in future webinars, so please stay tuned for that. Number 4 is soul fragmentation. I don't know if you've ever heard this word before, but souls basically, when you have a trauma, fragments sometimes just kind of parcel off because the energy of an experience is too much. The whole soul cannot, it just fritzes and it gets overwhelmed. And so to kind of save part of themselves, you fragment and you break apart. And believe it or not, after an entity clearing, there's a very simple and elegant maneuver that can actually unify all parts of the soul. So when we're not making choices in our lives from a place of wholeness, parts of us remain separate and at odds with the choices because it was not made from a place of solidarity. I hope that makes sense. And please ask more questions later. I would love to hear them. So number 5, this is a really important one. All of them are important, but this is a really a good overarching kind of umbrella piece, is we all want to feel good, safe, and loved. All of us need to feel these 3 things. When we don't, we're in conflict. We make decisions with only part of us. So this drives why we do almost everything we do. So if you aren't aware of the ways that you're doing this, start making small observations about how you try to feel good, safe, and loved. It's at the root of, seriously, almost every single thing you do in your daily life. If you want to get to work on time because you don't want to lose your job, because you want to get a paycheck so then you can, supply money and resources to your family, right? So it's those, I want to feel safe, I want to feel loved, and these are all the millions of decisions that you make throughout the day to keep all of that going and for your system to kind of be in a state of happiness in a way, in its own way. So number 6 is parts auditorium. This is a big goal of all aspects of the self are wanting to become unified. So when you have all these fragmented yeses and nos kind of happening in your system, when you finally get all the yeses and all parts of you are going the same direction, then there's nothing you can't achieve. So pretend you're in a car for a moment. Take apart a car in a gym floor. Examine the parts. Some are hidden, some are visible, like the stereo. The wires and power source are hidden, but the tuning and volume controls are visible. So imagine using the spare tire for a rope swing on a tree limb. It's been repurposed. So imagine it was part of you that got separated from its whole for whatever reason, trauma, sadness, etc. So now suppose you need to take the tire back and use it again as a spare. What we find with parts of us, even parts of our soul that get fragmented off from that whole, is what they need to be wooed again, right? They need to be enticed and encouraged and honored and accepted and for all that they've done, all they've experienced, and then they need to feel safe for what they are kind of wanting to go back into the whole. So they need to know that be honored, found, reunified with a greater self, included, never forgotten, and other things. So perhaps a better example now is to imagine that you were dating someone and they broke it off. Then they decided they wanted you back. There's a process involved. Forgiveness, getting into rapport, acknowledging, making that part feel safe and loved and honored for all that's done. So most of the time in our daily lives, our parts are in conflict, which is why we're not getting what we want. We're trying to find all these layers and all these aspects to get in alignment so we can shoot up to the stars and do all these amazing things, however small or big. Okay, so these parts are in conflict. So one part as told in the story of getting maybe coffee and donuts in the morning, is doing one thing to help, but another part is trying to lose weight. So there is an example that of, say, you want to lose, say, a person wants to lose weight, and gosh, those donuts sound really good, but you know, part of you wants it, part of you doesn't want it, and so there's this battle happening. Okay, so they're in conflict. So add in another part that doesn't want to get out of bed in the morning because it wants to make sure that no harm is done. Add in the part that drinks wine at night. All these things, you have all these parts that are kind of monitoring and taking care of the maybe optimal weight or physical balance that you want to be in. I want to be really cognizant of not getting into the weight discussion, but more of health and vitality, okay? So when you have all these different parts and they're going in all different directions, that's not going to really be comfortable for someone, and they're going to be always in conflict. I want this, but I want that, but. And it's struggle. And if we're doing that only for eating, imagine all these struggles that we're doing in the other parts of our lives, for work, balancing our family life, balancing our personal life. You have all these decisions and all these parts that could be and already are in conflict. We're trying to get everything in alignment and go forward. Okay, so number 6 was the parts auditorium. What are all those parts that are talking to us through our daily lives and making those decisions? Number 7 is the organismic rights. We all have them, and there are 6 of them. The full right to exist, the full right to need, the full right to be separate, full right to one's own action, full right to assert ourselves, full right to love and be loving. One of the ways that we test for where a person is severely limiting their life is by having them sit with a change work practitioner, NLP practitioner, and have them say directly to each one of these statements. Most women will break down when they're trying to say, I have the full right to need. Oh, I'm guilty of that one, definitely. When we don't have our rights in place, we suffer considerably. We learned long ago from our parents and those who had authority over us as little ones that our rights were not to be granted. Then we build a life not being able to get our rights met. If you want to look for your rights that are missing, try looking into the mirror and saying to your face a list of those rights. If I can add on to this is that these, imagine a pyramid or a foundation that is being created from age 0, the second you're born, maybe even before, of all these experiences, these rights. You have the full right to exist. That's the first one, like 0 to 6 months. You have the full right to need, like 6 to 12 months, and so forth. And so when you have a really strong foundation of the right to exist, then the right to need can be that much stronger, and to be separate and to have one's own action and so forth. If you do not have a very strong foundation with the right to exist, then the rest are going to be that much harder to really instill. So NLP is a great way to be able to look at these foundational rights. And I'll be honest, every time I have worked with a client, it gets down to these. It gets down to 0 to 2 and all these things. However inadvertent they are in these small moments, but we have these belief systems and judgments that are created in these moments when we're trying to survive. And so if you look at, rather than all those instances, look at the mirror and ask or say these things. I have the full right to need. I have the right to exist. And say them a few times to yourself. And you feel a little twinge, then you're probably getting somewhere and go, okay, how old was I when that happened? What was I feeling? What was I thinking? What was I doing at that time? Who do I need to forgive? Who do I need, do I need to forgive myself? What can I add to that to make myself feel better? We are so powerful in all these resources that we have that I think we underestimate it. But this is a way to uncover these imprints, all these root causes of what's causing strife in our life. Okay, so number 8, and this is kind of the last one that I'm going to go into, is family soul constellation therapy. So I will tell you, this is the mother load. This is amazing, amazing, amazing work, okay? So if you want to find out where all of your entanglements and SOLs are, which is suffering obligations of love, I'll get into that in a second. They are SOLs that are to the family. And this is where the orders of love can become unstuck so that everything can be made right. So here are some examples of what entanglements, things where kind of there are glitches, if you will, where they might be occurring. There are unworkable attempts in the present to fix the past to make for a better experience in the future. Trying to be bigger than our parents. Trying to fix what happened in the past, even generations ago, and I'll get into that in a second. There are devotional entanglements to say, I love you to the ancestors. You're trying to be in the grave, if you will. And there's only there is one instance of obesity that is noted in family constellation therapy. If a woman's mother was ever disrespected, there seems to be a devotional connection to this. So if someone is constantly overweight, it can be a sign that you're trying to be in the grave early on behalf of someone. Weight, metaphorically, might also be someone trying to have more presence, gravitas, be heard and better acknowledged. And it can also be an unintended outcome of trying to fix something. So again, kind of like we're talking about the tip of the iceberg, in family soul constellation therapy, you will see, gosh, I can't stay in relationships. I can't, or I'm triggered in these certain ways. You might have a real strong connection with an ancestor that you just think about them all the time. You might have experiences that are even, how should I say, on the outside looking in, maybe irrational, maybe, gosh, I had a client where they were just screwing up their lives and they had great education and really kind parents and kind of normal, if you will, like no major dramas, like regular childhood. But this person was just having such a hard time in this world, having relationships. They were kind of physically damaging themselves emotionally and mentally and physically. And everyone goes, I just don't understand. It was uncovered through this family soul constellations. And it was amazing what came forth. So what I want to get into for a moment is kind of these, what the heck is family soul constellations? What happens is we are kind of in a chain of experience, right? So I am current generation, I have my parents' experience and then the grandparents' experience and so forth. And when, say, a great-grandparent has had a very traumatic experience, maybe they emigrated, maybe they were in a war, maybe there was a great sickness, maybe there was, unfortunately, miscarriage or deaths, within the family that were just truly heartbreaking. When there are big traumas like that, the energy actually gets, kind of sticks with us, right? And not just emotionally, but it can turn into a physical shift in the DNA. And science has actually shown that those major traumas are transmitted physically through genetics for 14 generations after, okay? So we're not just dealing with emotional, but we're also dealing with physical energy that's being transferred down through the generations. So say there was that grandparent who had this major trauma, or grandparents. Maybe someone lied to the family and there is this huge loss of money. It can be any sort of thing. But when there is never a resolution in that family or with that person, things can kind of get out of whack. And, it's like a foundation. If this foundation is on unstable grounds, then the next layer will be kind of on unstable ground too. Imagine the Tower of Pisa, right? Well, it was really strong for a while, but then the soils couldn't handle all the weight. And so then the next layers of the architects and all the workmen started to try and adjust for the shifting Pisa. It's kind of the same sort of thing. I hope that visual is useful for you. Anyway, so when there are these stuck energies from long ago and far away, in effort to say I love you, the younger generations will try and fix that, even though they can't directly fix it, but they will try and replicate that pain in their own life to say, hey, there is something that's not working. There's something that needs to be resolved, and I'm going to do it. And so we end up kind of contorting our experience to, in an unworkable attempt to say I love you and be connected in the family in all the ways we can, be acknowledged and loved and right in our family systems, will kind of sabotage our world. But it's all because they want to love and be loved in the family system and fix what happened long ago and far away. And what's interesting in Family Soul Constellations is it's basically a group of people in a room where no one knows really anything about what the client is trying to fix. Everyone gets maybe a card with a title of mother or father or the problem or the root cause. Everyone folds it up, stick it in their back pocket. And what ends up happening is there are certain patterns that are consistent with the with all these stuck energies. And so when you offer a resolution within this microcosm, it ends up kind of creating this beautiful ripple effect in real world time. And so all these chronic things that have been going on for that client and maybe generations back, things kind of shift. And it's kind of trippy, but I will tell you, it's absolutely amazing. I have seen every constellation I have witnessed and experienced. I learn more about the world and how generations live and help each other and so forth. And when things get righted in this microcosm, in this constellation, the energy is smoothed out rather than really rough rapids. If you can imagine a huge river, rather than these rough rapids, it like smooths down and things get easier. And there's less for your brain to tackle, right? So rather than tackling entities, soul fragments, all these things, when you can clear all those things and calm your system down, where is the focus going to go? It's to all the yeses, right? We're taking out that baggage. We're laying them to rest. We're calming them down. We're updating our system, and we are aligning everything to go, yes, 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 this is what I want. How do I want it? What is it going to look like? How am I going to be experiencing it? Great, I can make that for myself. There are no obstacles anymore, okay? So I hope that the description of all these iceberg layers is really helpful for you. If you want to have a one-on-one session with me, I would love to do it. It's a 30-minute consultation to learn even more. I have a book, if you didn't know, Becoming Ridiculously Awesome. Who doesn't want that? You can find it, of course, on Amazon, or you can get it at my website, livingyourawesome.com, and I can personally inscribe something for you and mail it to you. So thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful day, and I hope to see you soon for more webinars and courses that I'm going to be offering soon. Have a great day.